लास्ट दो रोड आगे ले।
Okay, this row, this last row, please occupy this row quickly. ये वाला रो occupy करो। वहां पे लड़कियां भी हैं। बैठो, चलो, ये वाला पूरा है।
हेलो, ये क्या रहेगा? हेलो हेलो।
Okay, this row।
अरे वो चुप करना, ये वाला आवाज आ रहा है इधर। अभी किया तो बहुत। दास सर गा दो सर, दास सर चलेगा। इसको साउंड दिया क्या सर? तो दास सर बोल रहे हैं मुझे एडमिट नहीं किया है। ज्वाइन करो, बोलो वापिस एक बार। एक बार ज्वाइन करो। अभी म्यूट रखने के लिए बोलो उनको, उधर से म्यूट रखने के लिए बोलो उनको। आपने
Can you hear me?
Namaste. Namaste, Parasuraman sir. Are you able to hear us?
Yeah. Now I am able to hear. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to start with, a very good evening, everyone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Namaste. Namaste, Parasuraman sir. Are you able to hear us?
Yeah. Now I am able to hear. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to start with, a very good evening, everyone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Namaste. Namaste, Parasuraman sir. You able
The
to
problem. I think there's a problem. The sound keeps repeating.
Yes, sir. We are trying to. Thank you so much. Take it. Sir, just give us a second.
Sure.
Okay, so I guess the technical issue is solved. We shall begin. And to begin with, a very good evening, everyone. I, Yashri Sanjay, Senior Student Manager, BIMM.
And I, Nishant Aryan, Senior Student Manager, BIMM,
Extend a very warm welcome to this momentous day, where academia meets excellence and inspiration meets intellect. It's not every day that we get to learn from legends who defined the concepts we study. And today is one such day. Balaji Institute of Modern Management, which is the flagship institute of Sri Balaji University, Pune, is extremely proud and happy to host this masterclass.
ladies and gentlemen, the name A. Parasuraman isn't just mentioned in marketing textbooks, it's inked in their very foundation. The visionary behind the serve qual model revolutionized how the world understood service quality.
He is not just a professor, he is the architect of service excellence, a scholar whose frameworks have guided global brands and academic institutions alike. Before we move ahead, it is my absolute honor to virtually welcome the man whose research has shaped the way businesses across the globe deliver excellence in service. Ladies and gentlemen, with a big round, let's welcome Professor A. Parasuraman.
Sir, though you're joining us online today, your presence has filled this hall with energy and immense pride. You're not just a name in our curriculum, you are the reason many of us fell in love with marketing that serves, not just sells. On behalf of the entire university, our faculty, students, and guests, we extend a heartfelt welcome to you, sir. And now, to continue the tradition of extending warmth and respect to our guest, I would like to invite Dr. Archana Srivastav, Director BIMM, to share her words of welcome for Professor Parasuraman.
So, very good evening to all of you. And today for Sri Balaji University Pune, it is nothing short of a red letter day, for we have such a stalwart, Dr. A. Parasuraman sir, who is an absolute stalwart when it comes to services marketing. Sir, on behalf of Sri Balaji University, I extend a very warm welcome to you. It is indeed a privilege and honor for all of us here to be listening to you this evening. I'll not hold you back from listening to the expert, and I will urge each one of you to please listen to sir, take your notes and make the most of it.
Thank you, madam. And now I request Dr. Dhanraj Tambuskar, Deputy Head of Academics, to please come forward and continue the tradition of extending gratitude and respect to our guest.
Good evening, dear students and my dear colleagues. Very good morning, sir, and namaskar to you. Good morning, because you are there. It's 7 a.m. there, right?
Right.
It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you in online mode. But we would be very happy to host you at the campus whenever you visit India. So I must congratulate Dr. Binod Sinha sir and Dr. Prachi Vani and the entire ART for organizing today's masterclass. So our Honorable Chancellor, Professor Anand sir, he has initiated, this concept of masterclass to strengthen the academics. Of course, other than the masterclass, we have taken many initiatives like business simulation, HBR case studies, and there are many talks we regularly conduct by the industrial professionals as well as academicians. So I'm very happy to host you here in online mode, and I'm sure that the students would take the benefit of today's masterclass. Thank you so much, sir. And again, good morning to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. At our university, learning never pauses, it only evolves. Sri Balaji University, Pune, inspired by its visionary founder, late Dr. Colonel A. Balasubramanian sir, who strongly believed in academic excellence and doing courseware with full academic rigor. These strong values are well taken forward by our current Chancellor, Professor B. Parmanandan. Today's masterclass is just a vindication of those commitments. Ranked among India's top institutions in the NIRF rankings, our university continues to redefine what modern management education looks like. From AI-generated classrooms to value-added certification courses like AI in marketing and digital marketing strategies, we ensure our students aren't just keeping up with the world, they are leading it. With Coursera Access, Harvard Business Review case studies, and a calendar packed with national level competitions, we make sure every learner here feels the reason to win. And today, adding yet another milestone to that journey, we host a masterclass by one of the greatest minds in the fields of marketing and service research.
And to introduce this legend with the grace and artistry he deserves, I'd like to invite our very talented ART team member, Dr. Binod Sinha, Professor of Marketing, who will take us through a creative portrayal of the journey of Professor A. Parasuraman, the man, the mission, and the mark he has on the world of marketing.
So I am feeling proud and honored to introduce you, sir. Good morning, sir. Dr. A. Parasuraman is globally renowned professor in the field of marketing, best known for his pioneer work in service marketing, service quality measurement, and the role of technology in customer service. Over a distinguished career spanning more than 4 decades, he has made foundational contribution to marketing theory and practices, which includes development of service quality model, e-service quality model, and the Technology Readiness Index. He served as a James W. McLamore Chair, Professor of Marketing at the University of Miami, and continue to contribute as Professor Emeritus. Dr. A. Parasuraman has held several academic leadership roles, including mentoring at AIM Parasuraman Center for Service Excellence in Bangalore, serving as Pro-Chancellor Academics at Vijayabhumi University near Mumbai. He has been also a board member of SET Foundation and editor of leading journals such as Journal of Academic of Marketing Science and the Journal of Service Research. His academic journey includes degree from IIT Madras, degree from IIM Ahmedabad and Indiana University. Dr. Parasuraman's work has earned his numerous prestigious awards, which includes the American Marketing Association Career Contribution to the Service Discipline, the Academic of Marketing Science Outstanding Marketing Educator Award, and the Paul D. Converse Award for significant scholarly contribution to the marketing. He has been recognized as a highly cited researcher by Clarivate Analytics, with over 268,000 citations and H index of 100 and I-10 index of 227. His research impact is among the highest in the field, and his interest span services marketing, customer satisfaction, technology adoption, marketing strategy, making him one of the most influential figure in modern marketing world. Sir, most welcome to Sri Balaji University. Thank you, Nishan. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Vinod, sir. We're extremely sorry for the glitch, sir, but are you now able to hear us?
Yes, yes, I am. And are you able to hear me?
Absolutely, sir. And now the floor is all yours. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. So it says sharing is not turned on. So I'm going to send the request.
Sir, it's on. Can you check?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Good morning, everyone, and a heartfelt thanks to the wonderful introduction by several of you. It's my absolute pleasure to be able to share some of my insights with all of you this morning. The title for my talk, for my masterclass today is Winning Through Service Excellence in an Increasingly Technology-Dominated Marketplace. The reason I have this technology-dominated marketplace is that, as we all know and we all experience every day, technology is increasingly playing a greater role in all aspects of life, including marketing. So my work on service excellence and service quality has evolved from a traditional human interaction-based interactions with the marketplace to more of a technology-delivered interactions. So the theme of my talk today is going to revolve around not only service excellence per se, but also service excellence in the age of technology-dominated interactions with customers. So I always like to begin my talks on service excellence with a very favorite quotation of mine from Jeff Bezos. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Jeff Bezos. He's the CEO of Amazon. Quite some time back in the early years of the organization, he said, in an offline world, 30% of a company's resources are spent providing a good customer experience, and 70% goes to marketing. But online, 70% should be devoted to creating a great customer experience, and 30% should be spent on shouting about it. Now, if you reflect on this quotation, basically what he's saying is that what he's referring to as shouting is mainly the marketing-oriented promotional communications, like advertisements, commercials, brochures, hoardings. All of those things are yelling and screaming at customers. And the important insight here is that he's saying most of the marketing, particularly in an online type of environment, is about shouting, even today. But he says to create that great customer experience, which in turn results in service excellence, there needs to be a shift in mindset as well as a shift in resources away from mere shouting about what companies are selling to actually delivering good customer service. So keep that in mind as we go through this evening's talk. So an important implication of the preceding quotation from Jeff Bezos is achieving sustainable, the key word here is sustainable, achieving sustainable competitive advantage in today's markets requires serving customers in excellent fashion, not just selling to them. Sadly, even today, I would argue that much of the marketing tends to be more focused on selling, pushing products and services on customers rather than taking the time to actually make sure that the customer experience is good. So again, that is a very key point to keep in mind. Now, when you talk about sustainable competitive advantage as well as competitive advantage in general, there's a lot of literature on competitive advantage. But basically, for our purposes here, I would like to look at three different categories of sources of competitive advantage. One source of competitive advantage that the company can garner is what I would call product features. It's a very broad category, product features, regardless of whether you're selling a physical product or a service, the different components, the different attributes of whatever it is that you're trying to sell to the marketplace would fall into the first category. The second is an obvious category, which is price. For example, some companies compete on low price and high volume. Other companies compete on high price and kind of a niche marketing strategy. And then the third component is service. Service has to do with how customers feel about their interactions with an organization, whether it's a digital organization or whether it's a traditional, brick and mortar type of organizations. But the key point I want to make here is that of the three major categories or sources of competitive advantage, if you think about it, product features and price are relatively easy for competitors to copy, especially in this day and age where almost in any category, regardless of whether, again, it's a physical category or a service type category, there are a number of competitors, all of them pretty much trying to do the same things. In fact, you've all heard of the marketing mix, I'm sure. Of the four elements or four P's of the marketing mix, price is probably the easiest to change these days, especially in an online context. Prices can be changed very easily and very quickly to match competitors' prices. Similarly, almost any product category, you have, many brands, all kind of trying to do the same things. So while product features and price can give some competitive advantage, because of increased competition and increasing competition across the globe, it's not sustainable. What is sustainable in terms of sustaining your competitive advantage is service. Service, in fact, is the key to sustainable competitive advantage. Why? Simply because service is much more difficult for companies to copy relative to product features and in price. And that is why service, for the truly excellent marketing companies, service is really at the core of all of their marketing activities. So our focus today on service excellence is very appropriate because, to be a leading edge, highly successful, long-term marketing company, you need to have service excellence at its core. And also, as was mentioned in my title slide, technology is playing a growing role in service. It's almost ubiquitous now. Anywhere you turn, you see technology in place, interacting with customers. On the left-hand side, the top left picture is a self-service checkout counter in a store, so where you actually don't have to interact with any human if you don't want to. And then on the right-hand side, you have, again, this is very ubiquitous worldwide, pretty much in all airports, these self-service kiosks for check-in and so on. And then there are also now completely robot-operated service operations. For example, the bottom two pictures are from the Henna Hotel, which is a hotel in Japan. This actually exists. And some branches of this hotel are completely operated by robots. So a human being, a human server never interacts with a robot. Now, a key question to ask here is that, yes, all of this is nice and the technological capabilities are increasing the opportunities and expanding the variety of ways in which you can serve customers. But a key question to ask is, what does this do to the customer experience? Are all customers equally enamored with these technologies? That's another question that I would like to address during the talk today. So with that brief introduction, the key focus of my remarks today is as follows. I would like to offer some thoughts on creating a great customer experience, especially in an era of growing technology service convergence, which I just talked about, by drawing upon insights from three streams of research that I've been working on over the past 4+ decades. The first stream of research is the basic research that pertains to quality of service. The second stream relates to what I call a technology readiness of customers. And again, I'll expand on these as we go through the masterclass. And then the third stream on which I've also worked on more recently is this whole notion of service productivity. So we'll expand on each of these. So starting with service quality. First of all, by way of background of my research in the basic area of service quality, my research in this area actually began in the very, very early 1980s. And for the first 15 to 20 years of my research career, I've done dozens of studies in this area of service quality, along with two key co-authors who also I should mention. Many of you might have heard their names, Professor Leonard Berry and Professor Valerie Zeitamel. They are important co-authors in my work. So the three of us have done a variety of different studies trying to understand what does service quality really mean, particularly to customers, and what does service quality mean to companies? And do these two different perspectives match, agree, or disagree? So we have done a lot of research. And another thing I would like to mention here is that all of this research on service quality has been sponsored by the Marketing Science Institute, which is a major institute headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts. And the Marketing Science Institute, or MSI, you can search it on Google. Marketing Science Institute, the basic mission of the Marketing Science Institute is to bring together academics like myself with practitioners, the actual managers in the field, to see how academicians can contribute new ideas, new concepts that managers can immediately use in the work that they do. And the Marketing Science Institute is sponsored by about 75 or so Fortune 500 global companies. So much of our work in the area of quality of service was sponsored by the Marketing Science Institute. And again, as I mentioned a moment ago, we've done a series of research projects. So what I'm going to share with you, by the way, it's very hard to condense 40 plus years of research in a span of 45 minutes or so, but I will try my best by highlighting some of the major insights from the stream of research and the logical sequence of this research. So let me start with some of the basics about service quality. What is service quality? From a customer's perspective, our research shows that service quality results from a comparison of customer service expectations, that is, what customers think the company service provider should offer, with their actual service experience. Now, this is a very simple concept to understand, but this is based on a lot of research. By the way, I mentioned support from the Marketing Science Institute. In all of these research programs, in research projects, we have always include multiple companies from multiple sectors. For example, we have done a lot of research with customers in the form of focus group interviews and in-person, in-depth interviews with hundreds of customers in a variety of sectors such as retail banking, credit card services, long-distance telephone services, hotel services, appliance repair services, car repair services, you name it. We have looked at a variety of different sectors to try and see, what do customers think about quality of service? What do they think is really good quality service, and what do they think is really poor quality service, and why do they think so? So some of the key concepts I'm presenting here are derived from hundreds of such interviews from customers, cutting across different sectors. So service quality results from a comparison of customers' expectations with their actual service experience. And another important insight from all of these initial research studies is that the customer service experience frequently falls short of their expectations. So basically then what we are finding from our research, and this is true even today, is that a lot of companies are providing a service experience that doesn't really fully conform to what customers expect excellent companies should be offering. So typically there is a gap between what customers' expectations of what an ideal or an excellent service should be like and what companies are actually delivering. So to put this in pictorial form, I'm now getting to the so-called GAPS model of service quality, which also emerged from the initial set of studies that we did. From a customer's perspective, if you look at the left-hand side of this chart, very simply what we are seeing, and what I'm saying now, is that from a customer's perspective, there is typically a disconnect between what customers expect a service provider, an excellent service provider, to offer and what they actually perceive that the service provider is offering. Now, on the service organization or service company side, we have also done dozens and dozens of interviews with both senior managers, middle-level managers, as well as employees of those organizations to try and understand what is their understanding of service. What are some of the challenges that they face in delivering quality service on a consistent basis? Now, based on that, we've also come up with a number of insights on the service organization side. Now, to flesh out this so-called GAPS model picture, so let me start with labeling this customer service gap on the left-hand side of the chart as gap 5. And since I've labeled this gap 5, you know that there are 4 other gaps. And what our research shows, especially the research that we have done with the service companies, is that there are 4 major gaps within service organizations, which we are labeling gaps 1, 2, 3, and 4, that in turn result in this external gap 5. In other words, in mathematical terms, gap 5, which is the external gap experienced by customers, is because of 4 internal gaps, are a function of gaps 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, what are these gaps 1, 2, 3, and 4? So let me expand this picture a little bit. It looks a little bit intimidating, but it's actually quite straightforward. The 4 major gaps that we identified within companies is first of all, we have the market information gap. So as the picture here depicts, it is a gap between what customers' actual service expectations are and the company's understanding or the organization's understanding of those expectations. And even to this day, there are a lot of gaps here. And then even in companies where managers, particularly senior managers, might have a fairly good understanding of what customers' expectations are, they may not have the proper organizational standards, may not have the proper guidelines to provide a quality of service that matches those standards. So we're calling this the service standards gap, which is gap 2. And then this gap 3 is what I call a service performance gap. This is the disconnect between whatever internal standards or internal guidelines the company might have relative to what the company actually delivers to customers. The disconnect between internal organizational standards and the actual service performance delivered by the organization. And then the last gap is what I call an internal communication gap. The internal communication gap has to do with a disconnect between the providers of the service, the people that actually provide the service, and the people that communicate to customers about what the service is going to be like. So typically this disconnect, internal communication gap, relates to a lack of contact, a lack of coordination between the deliverers of the service and the promisers of the service. This is a gap between the providers and the promisers of the service. Typically, in organizational label terms, this is a disconnect between the so-called marketing function within organizations and the operations function. People, for example, if you go to a bank, the people that are providing the service are the actual operations people, the tellers, the branch managers, and so forth. Those are the operations people. They don't do the marketing for the company. Typically, the marketing is a separate department, probably in some headquarters of the bank. So they do all of the external communications with customers. And to the extent that there is an internal communication gap, a lack of proper coordination between the marketing people and the operations people, you're bound to have some amount of service quality gap on the customer side. So to summarize then, the GAPS model is simply a conceptual framework for helping companies start thinking about how to go about improving service quality and therefore how to increase the service excellence that they deliver to the marketplace. Now, if I have time, I can spend 1 hour talking about each of these 4 gaps. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but I will take a more in-depth look at gap 1, because gap 1, or the market information gap, is a major disconnect in many firms. Even to this day, a lot of companies are throwing a lot of resources into things that they believe internally will be good for the customer, but the things that really don't match what the customers actually want. So this is a major disconnect. So let me share with you some examples. I'll get into some examples now to flesh out some of the theoretical concepts that I've already started talking about. So market information gap. So as part of my travels around the world, during the last many decades, I get to stay at a number of different hotels in a number of different cities. Sometime back, about 10 years back or so, I had occasion to stay at this hotel, which is called the Melilla Castilla Hotel in Madrid, Spain. And it's a nice, 4-star, 5-star type hotel. And I went up to my room after checking in, and one of the things that really attracted my attention was a pillow menu. Now you won't be able to read, what's written on that menu carefully, but let me just explain what this was. This is a nice glossy-looking pillow with a choice of 9 different pillows offered both in English. This is English, and then Spanish. So they're describing a choice of 9 different pillows. So when I first saw this pillow menu, I got all excited as a customer. Wow, I've never seen anything like this before. They are offering me a choice of 9 different pillows. So, but then as I started experiencing the basic service of the hotel, almost everything that should not go wrong in a 4-star or 5-star hotel actually did go wrong. For example, there was in addition to the pillow menu, there was a regular menu as well, on which you can order breakfast for the following day, or you can order, whatever you want to eat in the morning when you get up, and then hang it on the doorknob outside and be able to enjoy breakfast in your room. So on the first day, I picked up the room service or the breakfast menu, and then order some breakfast. And then they also say, okay, when would you like the breakfast to be delivered as part of that menu card? Some of you might have seen it in other hotels as well. So I picked a certain time. And then when the next morning, when the breakfast arrived, it was 45 minutes late. And then I also discovered, after the waiter had dropped the tray off and left, I discovered that it was the wrong order. It's not what I had ordered. So 2 fatal flaws right there in a 4-star, 5-star type of hotel. So the point I want to make here is that many companies today are offering pillow menus or equivalent services when actually the customer's expectations are quite different. And if you had to ask yourself, how many of you would want to have a choice of 9 different pillows? A lot of times you don't even understand what the 9 different choices are, or how you would pick, one of the 9. So it's kind of a, ideal service imagined by the hotel's management, but not really reflecting what customers might actually want. Some of us as customers might say, okay, I want a soft pillow or a hard pillow, but 9 different choices, I think virtually no customer would actually have that kind of an expectation. But, they would have an expectation that if I ordered breakfast on a menu card and placed it on the doorknob, I expect the breakfast to be delivered correctly and at the appointed time, right? So those would be an expectation. So this is a classic illustration of gap 1. Another important point I want to make with the same example is that this pillow menu service is not a cheap service to provide. For example, imagine how would you implement this pillow menu service? First of all, you need to have an inventory of 9 different pillows, right? Which is a humongous expense. You need to have a place to store all the pillows, almost like a warehouse or a godown to serve all the to stock all the pillows. And then you need a lot of labor to carry the pillows. When a customer requests a certain type of pillow, somebody has to take it to the room, bring it back, and clean it after the guest leaves, and so on. So it's a very labor-intensive, very expensive type of pillow service. So many companies, even today, waste a lot of resources on adding bells and whistles to their offerings, bells and whistles that customers really don't expect. And yet at the same time, they are not providing the basic service that customers are desiring to get from the company. Just very quickly, another example. This is from the Sahara Star Hotel. I have a lot of hotel examples that I can share with you. I'll share this one and then another one as well. This one is from India. You know, so many of you might be familiar with the Sahara Star Hotel just outside Mumbai airport. So again, 4-star, 5-star type of hotel. When I checked into the hotel room, I was fascinated with the bedside electronic control panel that I actually took a picture of it with a lot of different controls to control the lighting, the curtains. The basic idea was that the customer, without having to even get out of bed, they can control, all the things, the curtains, the lighting, everything. But the problem is, it took me about 15 minutes to figure out all the controls, which control operates what, because there were no written instructions. You'll have to figure out. So that itself was problem number one from a customer's perspective. Then being an IIT Madras graduate and a mechanical engineer, I like to play with gadgets. So I was able to understand, or at least I thought I was able to understand all the controls in about 10, 15 minutes. So and then I went about with all my meetings during the day, and then late at night when I came back tired, and I got into bed and I was trying to turn off lights. So the first couple of buttons worked as designated on the panel. It turned off the correct lights. And then I wanted to turn off the light that was in the bathroom. So I tried to, press some button which I thought was the bathroom light. And then the mood lighting started coming up. Mood lighting. Some colors changed in the ceiling. And finally, I thought maybe I was making some mistakes. Then I said, okay, I don't want to do anything with the electronic control panel. I'll just actually get out of bed and walk to the bathroom and turn off the physical switch. So I went up to the bathroom to turn off the physical switch, but I couldn't find any physical switch. So apparently, maybe I was too tired and the switch was hidden somewhere, which I couldn't find. But I had to come back to the panel to turn it off. So as a customer, I was going through a lot of trauma, supposedly created by this fantastic, new service that that is supposed to make the customer's life easier. Instead, it was having the opposite effect, if you follow what I'm saying. To complete the story though, finally, the way I could, I thought I'll just shut the bathroom door so that the light doesn't, bother me. I shut the bathroom door, but there is like a half an inch gap through which all the light was still streaming. So finally, I resorted to a low-tech solution. I took a towel and then placed it under the door to block off that gap to close the light. So many of us as customers, even today, you can think of your own experiences, improvise your own, low-tech solutions to combat the problems caused by so-called high-tech, solutions. Again, this example we will come back to later on when we talk about technology readiness of customers. And then another quick example, this is the Lemon Tree Hotel in Electronic City, Bangalore. I go there often because of my affiliation with Jackson there in Bangalore, which is a business school. And here, I want to share an experience of mine with Lemon Tree Hotel's closet area, where they have a closet for hanging clothes. So as you can see, this is a part of the closet. Okay, this picture is better. This is the entire closet space. Now, the place to hang clothes is very, very limited, less than about a fourth, almost, less than about a fourth of the whole closet space. You can see that big area, vacant space at the bottom that all wasted. And then if you open this one, it's closed right now. Can't really hang closed there. There are a lot of shelves there. So the problem is I couldn't, especially for ladies, I at least was, as you can see, all of these are overhanging. If the ladies have long dresses and so forth, there is no space. And then the other corner of the bedroom, next to the sofa, there was this blank space. Then I said to myself, I'm a very frustrated customer because of my work in service quality. I always look for, maybe I look too much for faults in different service providers' facilities. But in this case, my first thought was, why can't they use this space for providing a lengthier, closet with a lot of hanging space? So there was just this empty space with a light on it. Maybe they wanted to put a statue or something there, which again would have been nice, but would not have helped. So the problem is many of these companies, again, stepping back from the hotel service, they design services. This is a design issue where the designer of the hotel room, this was actually a newly renovated room in the Lemon Tree Hotel in Electronic City, that the designer's concept of how a closet should look like does not coincide with the customer's desires of the practicality of the closet. So there are a lot of design elements like this which are still lacking in many organizations, even in high-tech organizations. So moving on from the conceptual model, GAPS model of service quality, to more of a set of empirical studies that I've done over the years that produced the so-called CirQual scale. The CirQual scale, as again, many of you might already have heard this name, is a 5-dimensional scale to measure this expectations perceptions gap on the customer side. So what we find based on our research is that reliability, which is one of the 5 dimensions, again, the dimensions are given here at the bottom. Reliability basically has to do with delivering the promised service dependably and accurately. Responsiveness has to do with willingness to be helpful to customers and providing prompt or speedy service. Assurance has to do with reassuring customers that you're dealing with a trustworthy service provider, that you can trust the service provider. Empathy has to do with more of the human touch, feeling of caring for the customer. And tangibles is really quite an interesting dimension. Tangibles has to do with all the visible aspects of the service. So even though the basic core of a service is intangible, there are a lot of tangibles associated with it. For example, in the pillow menu example, the tangibles were excellent. In the Sahara Star example, the tangibles, the appearance aspects are excellent. But the other aspects, particularly reliability, by the way, this pie chart here, again, is based on a number of studies that we have done, empirical studies, where we ask customers to allocate a total of 100 points across the five categories. And what we find is reliability consistently is the most important dimension. Otherwise, the reliability has to do with consistently delivering the promised or expected service. And tangibles, ironically, is the least important from the customer's perspective. So again, this is the empirical evidence illustrating this mismatch between what customers expect and where companies put most of their effort in terms of marketing their services. This is the initial version of CirQual, and then we've done, because customer expectations, if you remember one of the earlier slides, I said that gap 1 is the most important gap in the sense that most companies do not understand what customers' expectations really are and deliver services based on what they the companies internally think is great service. We devoted another 2 to 3 years worth of research trying to understand what are the sources, what is the nature of customers' expectations, and what are the sources of those expectations. Based on those studies, we came up with a number of concepts. One of the key concepts that emerged is the so-called zone of tolerance. The zone of tolerance refers to a range of customer expectations. One of the key insights from our study on expectations of customers is that customers don't always have one fixed level of expectations, which is the ideal expectation. Instead, most customers have a range of expectations with an upper boundary and a lower boundary. And you can think of your own experiences. A lot of times, you're willing to be flexible to a certain extent in terms of what type of service you're willing to accept. So there is a desired service at the upper boundary of the zone of tolerance, which is the level that customers believe can and should be delivered by an excellent company. On the other hand, most customers are reasonable. They are willing to relax that standard up to a certain minimum level or adequate level of service. Adequate level of service is the minimum level that customers are willing to accept. So this zone of tolerance idea is an important idea because the practical implication here is that if you know what the customer zone of tolerance is, then as long as you deliver a service that falls within the zone, you should be okay. You don't always necessarily have to jump over the moon, so to speak. You don't always have to provide service above and beyond the zone of tolerance. So we have taken this idea of zone of tolerance, we have taken the original CIRQUAL scale and refined it to be able to measure the zone of tolerance. And we have done a number of CIRQUAL studies in a number of industries and companies using this refined CIRQUAL instrument. And I just want to share a couple of different examples of some of the results from these studies. This is a chart for a computer manufacturer, which is IBM, by the way, which is one of the companies that participated in our series of research studies. This is for IBM, and the context here is B2B. We did a study for IBM where we wanted to measure the quality of service that IBM personnel were delivering to their other business customers out in the industry. So it's a B2B type of context where we are measuring quality of service. Now, on this chart, on the left, on the bottom, we have the 5 dimensions of service quality. And across the side, we have a 10-point scale. Actually, it's a 0 to 9, but it's a 10-point scale on which we measured the desired level of service, which is the upper boundary of the zone of tolerance, and then the adequate service, which is the lower boundary. And these red dots are the actual service quality perception. That's the average service quality perception. So just look at this picture for a moment. This picture clearly shows that in terms of falling within the zone of tolerance, IBM on the whole is doing a decent job. All of these red dots are within, or in the case of tangibles, is slightly above the zone of tolerance. So they are okay. But if you compare across dimensions more carefully, you see that the IBM's best performance is on which dimension? It is on tangibles. Tangibles, where they are actually slightly exceeding the desired level of service. See this red dot here? They're slightly exceeding. But look at IBM's performance on all of the other 4 dimensions. They're barely above the minimum level of service. So this again is a very good empirical evidence indicating that there are probably opportunities for IBM as well as for many other companies to reallocate resources. If you look at the pie chart that we put up on the previous slide, the pie chart shows that tangibles is the least important dimension for customers. Reliability is the most important dimension. And what we see here is that in terms of the actual performance and resource allocation, as implied by this, is on tangibles. Too much attention on the visible aspects of the service provider and not enough on the other more critical aspects. Another point I would like to make here is that most companies don't have a very good understanding of what customers' expectations are. I mentioned that previously as well. In fact, many of you would have filled out customer satisfaction studies and so forth. The typical customer satisfaction study will give you a number of different attributes of the service provider and say, okay, how would you rate us on the physical facilities? How would you rate us on, if you're a hotel, you'd say, how would you rate us on the front desk personnel? How would you rate us on room service menu? Whatever, attributes. So all those attributes are simply measured based on the customer's perceptions alone, right? And usually there's a 5-point scale or a 10-point scale going from, very poor to very good or whatever the scales might be. But basically, they're only measuring the perceptions of customers. And if you just measure the perceptions of customers, you won't get such a detailed picture. For example, if in this IBM study, we had only measured perceptions, this is what the chart would look like. Where the perceptions are pretty much on a horizontal line, somewhere around 7.5 to 8, right? So if you look across. So most managers would look at something like this, pat themselves on the back and say, good job. On a scale of 1 to 9 or 0 to 9, we are around 7.5 to 8 on all of the attributes. So no problem. We are doing very well. On the other hand, if you superimpose the zone of tolerance, if you have some idea of the expectation, then now IBM managers looking at the chart like this would not definitely pat themselves on the back, because there's room for improvement. You're probably overspending on tangibles and not spending enough attention and resources on these other dimensions. So very quickly, let me go through another example. This is from the retail B2C side. Here's a company called Sears. Some of you may have heard of this name. It's a major retailer in the US, but it's no longer doing well. So again, we did the same kind of circle study with a different sample of customers, where once again, if you look at the service quality perceptions of customers, they're all pretty much around 7 on a 10-point scale. Again, not bad. But when you superimpose a zone of tolerance, you can see that the only dimension on which Sears gets passing marks is on tangibles. On all of the other dimensions, the service that is provided doesn't even meet the minimum requirements. So again, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you have information about customers' expectations, you can get much more insightful information about how to reallocate resources and where to reallocate resources so as to improve quality of service. Okay, so let me now move on to my next topic, which is technology readiness of customers. And again, what is technology readiness? Technology readiness, or TR, refers to people's propensity to embrace and use new technologies for accomplishing goals in home life and at work. Basically, this concept relates to an internal, almost personality-like characteristics of customers. Most of us have an inherent, hardwired propensity to react in a certain way to all of these cutting-edge technologies. Right now, for example, we have a lot of this AI and chatbots and all those kinds of advances in terms of information we can get and service we can get and so on. AI is playing a pervasive role. So how do customers react to any cutting-edge technology that initially hits the marketplace? That's what the TR concept measures. The TR concept, technology readiness concept, relates to customers' attitude or personality type reaction to cutting edge technologies in general. It's not, I must emphasize that technology readiness is not a measure of technical competence. Technical competence is something that you can correct through training. But customers' attitude or inherent proneness towards cutting edge technologies cannot be changed that easily. That is something to keep in mind. So myself and another colleague of mine, who is actually a practitioner, his name is Charles Colby. He's a manager. He's the founder of a marketing research company. He and I, over the last 20 years, have done a lot of research on this technology readiness, both qualitative research in the form of focus group interviews, as well as lots of empirical studies over the years. And basically, to develop kind of a measure of technology readiness, we initially created a kind of a conceptual model again. And what this model shows is that technology readiness consists of four major components. Two of those components are contributors to a person's technology readiness. Optimism component relates to a general feeling that all technological advancements are good, that technology in general is a very positive thing. Now, as customers and as people, and you can think of your own situations, not all of us are equally in agreement with the statements such as, all of these technological advancements are good. Some people would agree completely. Other people might not agree at all. So that is the technology optimism part. And then innovativeness is an inherent characteristic of people to try new things, the extent to which they are likely to experiment with new things, innovativeness. On the inhibitor side, shown in red here, or discomfort. Discomfort has to do with the feeling, which is kind of an overall paranoia or overall fear of technology, or anything that is new in technology. Some people say, oh, that technology is going to take over. That's going to control us, rather than we being in control of the technology. Similarly, insecurity is also a type of a fear of technology, but this is more not, rather than an overall paranoia, this is more like a transaction-specific fear. Because even to this day, many of us, or many people, I should say, in online banking contexts are not very confident. Why do some people, especially senior citizens and so forth, keep going back to the bank branches rather than doing the transactions online? Because they feel more secure with the interacting with the human rather than doing the things online. So those are transaction-specific fears. Anyway, so we have these four different components of technology readiness. Two of them contribute to technology readiness, they increase technology readiness. The other two kind of take away from technology readiness of consumers. So we have done a number of empirical studies to develop a scale to measure this called the Technology Readiness Index, or the TRI. There's some literature on this. The original scale that we developed was in the early 2000s, and the scale was published in the Journal of Service Research in May of 2000. And more recently, in 2015, we refined and modified the scale, and it's much more streamlined as well. And we are calling that TRI 2.0, which was also published in the Journal of Service Research. So those scales are available. If any of you is interested, you can look it up, do a Google search on these. You'll be able to get these. But I just want to very quickly talk about a few of the main insights that emerge from empirical studies that we have done using the TRI scale. So one of the things that Charles Colby, my co-author in the series of studies, and I have been doing in the US, is conduct a technology readiness survey, national technology readiness survey every year. And one of the things that we are finding is that if you look at the overall technology TRI, the TRI is measured on a 5-point scale, 1 to 5. And the distribution of scores across the population in the United States, we also done this in some other countries. The pattern is the same. It usually follows a normal distribution. What this means is that not all people are equally inclined to embrace cutting edge technologies. There are some people, most of the people are in the middle, around 3. They score around a 3. There are some people that are at this extreme or the other extreme, but by and large, not everybody is equally enthusiastic. An important point to make here is that many companies, as they are introducing a lot of these technology-based enhancements to services, they forget the fact that there is this inherent bell curve within the population of users who are being exposed to those cutting edge technologies. So to the extent that managers can proactively think about the fact that there are different segments of customers with different proclivities towards these high-tech enhancements, then you can be a much better marketer. You'll be able to serve customers better. In fact, based on our empirical data, we have done some market segmentation studies as well. So again, at a very high level, without getting into any of the numbers, we have identified 4 major segments of customers, which we are labeling explorers, pioneers, skeptics, hesitators, and avoiders. And the profile of these 5 segments that we have identified vary across the 4 TR dimensions as follows: optimism, innovativeness, discomfort, and insecurity. As you can see here, explorers are high, high, low, low. These are people that don't have. Excuse me, sorry, I dropped my. Okay, I dropped my mouse, and then that created a technology issue. Sorry about that. So explorers are gung-ho about all kinds of any kind of new technology that hits the pike, comes down the pike, so to speak. They'll be willing to try because they don't have any discomfort. Pioneers, on the other hand, they are almost like schizophrenic. They are very inclined towards technology. At the same time, they are also have these fears and discomfort about technology. Skeptics, they're not necessarily afraid of technology, but they say, why do I need all this technology? So I can, spend a lot of time talking about these segments, but the main idea I wanted to convey today is that there are different segments of customers, and to the extent that marketers can understand what those different segments are, then they can come up with marketing strategies that appeal more specifically to certain types of segments, depending on what their market composition is. So again, at a very high level, you can think of explorers, pioneers, skeptics, hesitators, and avoiders having different preferences for high-touch service, appeal of high-touch service channels. This is the people-based service interactions, as opposed to high-tech service channels. These are technology-based service interactions. Again, logically, based on everything that I've talked about, you can see the logic of this chart that, explorers are probably people that would prefer to deal with high technology, high-tech interaction channels. In fact, they may prefer not to deal with human beings at all in a service context. And at the other extreme, we have these avoiders, who need a lot of hand-holding and would not be very comfortable with really cutting-edge types of technologies. Okay, now in the next 5 minutes or so, I'll try to very quickly go through this third topic that I wanted to touch on today, which is service productivity. What is service productivity? Especially in this technology era, a lot of the rationale for providing high-tech service is to improve service productivity. For example, in modern days, there's a lot of talk about AI replacing human completely. Although there's a lot of debate about that, I don't want to get into that now. But there's a lot of talk in managerial circles about using technology to improve service productivity. So service productivity, what is service productivity? The classic definition of service productivity is the ratio of companies' inputs to outputs. Many companies, though, don't look at technology and its impact on customers. They look at service productivity basically from an internal company side and not through a customer's lens or perspective, so to speak. So what I am proposing is that service productivity can and should be evaluated from the perspectives of both companies internally as well as from customers externally. In other words, typically, I've come up with this, by the way, I've come up with this conceptual framework, which I will flesh out in a minute. But typically, in most companies that I've observed and worked with, the technology productivity and service productivity, they are completely purely viewed from a company's perspective. Like, what are our inputs? How much labor, how much equipment, how much technology, how much resources are we inputting into the process, and what are we getting out? Sales, profits, market share, etc. Those are the measures. So that ratio is what they focus on mostly. But then, given that most services, again, this is a key characteristic of services, most services are produced in an interaction between customers and companies, interaction between customers and companies or company personnel or company interfaces. So you can think of a parallel customer perspective definition of productivity. Okay, so time, effort, emotional energy, etc., are the inputs that customers bring to the interaction, and the outputs are service performance, service satisfaction, how happy they feel about the service, and those are the typical outputs on the customer side. And what the research, my research shows is that typically there is a disconnect between these two in many companies, in the sense that companies tend to focus a lot of attention on the left-hand side, not enough or any at all on the right-hand side of this chart. And I would argue, based on everything that we have talked about so far, is that service quality can serve as the bridge between these two. In fact, let me take a closer look at this. Taking a closer look at this conceptualization of service productivity. And what I've done here is to add a few more arrows and darken a couple of arrows. So let me just quickly go through this. We have service quality. Again, when we began our opening slide, Jeff Bezos's quote, if you remember, we said that marketing should focus a lot of attention on improving the customer service experience. They should provide excellent customer service experience. One of the key drivers of an excellent customer experience is service quality, high quality service. And this higher the quality of service that the customer experiences, the better their overall service experience will be. In other words, this relationship is positive. Likewise, from a customer's perspective, the customer has to spend less time, effort, and less frustration. Emotional energy relates to frustration that customers often experience. The less they have to input into obtaining the service, the greater is the service quality, right? So this negative relationship is also pretty obvious. So these are pretty obvious relationships. Now, the two other arrows that I've kind of darkened here in this closer look chart are these. So if you look at service quality and its relationship to company's input, ideally, this relationship should be positive. Ideally, what do I mean by that? Ideally, whereas companies spend more labor, equipment, and technology in the name of improving service quality should go up. But I put this in a red circle. I've shown this plus sign in a red circle to indicate that that is not always the case. Ideally, this should be the case. In many real life situations, this relationship instead of being positive is negative. I go back to my example of a pillow menu, right? Think about that. The pillow menu and the electronic control panel, the high technology side, the two hotel experiences that I shared with you. In both those cases, actually the company was spending a lot of resources, right? Both in the pillow menu case, as we saw, it was a very expensive service. And again, in the electronic, putting all the controls in a bedside electronic panel, that's not a cheap service. I'm sure the hotel, Sahara Hotel, spent a lot of resources, made a lot of investment in that. But was my experience good? In both cases, it was, it was very poor. So in my case, this relationship, instead of being positive, which ideally it should be, actually turned out to be negative. Likewise, ideally, if the company is spending a lot of resources in improving quality of service, the customer's burdens, the amount of inputs the customer has to provide, should be less. Ideally, there should be a negative relationship. Again, going back to my Sahara Star Hotel experience, I would say that this, in fact, was positive in my case. Instead of being negative, this relationship was positive. What do I mean by that? Sahara Star Hotels put in a lot of money from the company side to provide this bedside panel. But in my case, that didn't help me at all. In fact, I had to improvise a low-tech solution to solve the light problem streaming out of the bathroom door, right? So I had to come up with a towel and a lot of effort and time and also frustration that I experienced. So the point is that in many companies, there is a lot of opportunity here to think about reallocating resources and reallocating their priorities in terms of service productivity vis-a-vis customers' priorities. In other words, to conclude this slide, I would say, these signs, this negative sign and this positive sign that I've shown on this chart, will be true only if companies' inputs are aligned. The keyword here is aligned, are aligned with customers' expectations and their abilities, including the technology readiness of customers. So that's the point that I want to make. And then this is my last slide. So to wrap it all up together, I've created, again, this is a conceptual 2x2 matrix, which I'm calling a typology of service enhancements. Many companies, especially in this technology era, are adding a lot of technology-based enhancements to their service. The traditional marketers are becoming more tech-oriented. They're offering a lot of tech-oriented options for the traditional, face-to-face service delivery options. So instead of, before providing any service enhancement, it'll be useful for companies to think about those enhancements in terms of where in this quadrant that potential technology enhancement or even a regular service enhancement would fall. Before getting into that, if you look at the horizontal axis of this chart, the companies can ask, what is the impact of this particular enhancement on service productivity from our perspective, from the company's perspective? Is it going to be favorable or unfavorable? Likewise, on the vertical dimension, we have the impact on service quality from the customer's perspective. Remember that dual model that we had, both inputs and outputs from the customer's perspective and the company's perspective. That's what this matrix corresponds to. So if you look at this quadrant here, unfavorable from both components, I would say, these kinds of service enhancements that fall in this quadrant are dumb enhancements. I would say the pillow menu in the case of my, Malaya Castilla hotel experience, as well as the electronic control panel in terms of the Sahara hotel experience that I had, would definitely fall in this. In my case, it would definitely fall in this dumb category. Likewise, if a particular service enhancement internally will create a lot of efficiency, but will create a lot of problems for the customer, favorable for the company, but unfavorable for the customer. Again, I would go to the electronic control panel. I don't think it was very efficient for the company, but sometimes even enhancements that are very efficient for the company because the technology is taking over everything might be a short-sighted enhancement if it creates problems for at least some of the key segments of customers. Likewise, if a company gives customers whatever they want, that will become unaffordable. In other words, if the favor run only in the direction of customer, but not for if it's unfavorable for companies, then it's unaffordable. Companies cannot sustain those kinds of enhancements. So the sweet quadrant, so to speak, or the sweet spot for service enhancement to be is in the upper left quadrant or the win-win quadrant. So there are potential service enhancements that are either going to be unaffordable or short-sighted. I would say companies should think ahead, think proactively about, can we shift these? Can we move these into the win-win column? For example, if some customers are demanding certain types of enhancements, can we charge them a different price? Can we charge them a higher price if they are willing to pay for it? That will move it from the unaffordable to more of the win-win component or quadrant for that segment of customers. Similarly, short-sighted enhancements, you try and see whether you can move it into the win-win quadrant. And what do you do with the dumb ones? The dumb ones, I would say, you get rid of those. Get rid of those because that'll free up resources. These dumb enhancements, first of all, if you don't invest in those dumb enhancements, you would save a lot of resources, which you can then reallocate to things that customers really would enjoy having and would also improve their experience. So with that, I would like to conclude by pointing to 3 additional sources of information. These are actually cover pages or titles, covers of 3 different books. The first book that myself and the 2 other professors that I mentioned co-authored was Delivering Quality Service. And the second book that Professor Len Berry and myself authored was Marketing Services Competing Through Quality. This is a book that deals with some of the marketing strategies that can be anchored in many of the service quality principles that the first book talks about. And then the third book is the one that I co-authored with Charles Colby, who is the practitioner colleague of mine. And this focuses on a lot of the technology related aspects that we talked about. So I'm sorry for having to have rushed through some of these slides, but I wanted to stay on time. So I hope I have planted some seeds in your mind that would hopefully germinate into something more useful as you think of your careers and your future work life and so forth. So you can explore any of these ideas that we talked about today in greater detail through some of the written materials that I've published, or if you have any specific questions, I'll be able to handle them as well. I think we have about 5 or 6 more minutes. So let me turn it over to the organizers. I'll also stop sharing the screen. Okay, so let me stop right here and turn it over to the host to conduct the rest of the session. Hello?
Thank you so much, sir. It was amazing hearing from the architect himself. It was genuinely one of the greatest times we have had with or within our masterclass. So, audience, the round is now open for question and answers. You can ask your questions.
Uh, Good morning, sir. My name is Ayush Dedi, and my question is, as student entering the industry, how can we practically apply the principle of quality service in our early career, even if we aren't in direct customer facing role?
Yeah, very good question. I would say, employees of an organization are internal customers. Okay, so you may not be directly customer facing externally, but you are, internally customer facing. You have other colleagues, right, that you work with, and you're probably on teams, right? Most of you work on teams. There are team players. So the efficiency of the team that you work with can benefit from some of these same principles. One of the things that there's a whole area of marketing called internal marketing. Internal marketing has to do with taking care of your own employees, making sure you understand their expectations, and delivering the internal services that are necessary to meet those internal customers' expectations. In fact, you cannot have excellent external marketing unless and until you have excellent internal marketing. So I would, again, this is a very, very short and somewhat flippant answer to your question, but I would say that you can apply some of the same principles to how can I add value to the company by dealing with my, teammates, with my managers, and if you have subordinates in an excellent fashion, and create that corporate culture of customer orientation within the organization, because that can certainly kind of bleed into service excellence externally. So many of the principles are very, very applicable internally as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Hello, sir. I am Aditya Jha from BMHRD Marketing. Sir, I'm reaching out to you regarding a question like being a mentor of a B school. So, what advice would you give to someone to lead the next wave of marketing and entrepreneurship?
Wow, that's a very broad question. So I would say, again, the previous question also related to, entry-level jobs and so forth. So I would say, again, this is an advice that you might have heard from other people also. You're just entering the marketplace. So even before you sit for the interview, I would say you research the company. Research the company, what are they doing? What are the services that they are providing? Who are their basic customers? Who are their customer targets, right? And then go well prepared. And some of the principles, general principles we talked about today would be very applicable. You can, for example, we talked about how much opportunity there is for reallocating resources in many companies. A lot of companies are spending resources on the wrong things. We looked at a few examples during the talk today. And so to the extent that you can bring that into the interview process, that itself would be helpful. And then once you get into the company, again, always, look for opportunities. And again, you're all very young minds and you're also much more tech savvy, talking about technical competence compared to, some of older folks, senior citizens like us. But there is still technology readiness aspects. That is something that you can also try and provide some input upper management in terms of let's look at what the customer side of the equation is, so to speak, in terms of technology-based services. So those are just some very, very broad responses for you to start thinking about the next wave of marketing, as you put it. Okay.
Hello. So this is Amna Dixit from BIIB. So my question is, in this technology-driven era, do you think many companies are switching from humans to chatbots? Do you think chatbots can do a better job than humans, or do you think in some areas humans are still required?
Yeah, that's it's definitely the latter, in my opinion. Chatbots do have. You can sit down too. That's okay. Yeah, don't have to keep standing. Yeah, chatbots are useful, but I've had my own frustrations with chatbots. They're getting better, but they cannot completely. You talk about the emotional energy. Sometimes you have to expand because this also happened in a previous era where many of you may not have born then, where we had this telephone calling and then they go through a chatbot kind of thing. They didn't have actual chatbots, but if you want this, you press one. If you want that, press. Even today, we have the same thing. It's very frustrating for customers. A lot of emotional energy is being spent. So, as a designer of technology-based services, including chatbots, I would say that what is the customer experience with the chatbot? One way you could contribute to your organizations as you get on your first jobs or entry level jobs, or as you move up the corporate ladder, so to speak, is that what is the customer's experience reaction? Are all customers equally enthusiastic about using chatbots? Again, going to the technology readiness type of idea. So I would say, start thinking along those lines, and that way you can think, young minds that you can add a lot of value that you can provide to your potential employers.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. My name is Samad Habib. I'm specializing in product management and business analytics. And from my specialization's point of view, I really loved your entire masterclass. And I want to ask you specifically about technology readiness index as well as typology of the service enhancements. Was your technology readiness index based upon the technology adoption model, or TAM, and as well as the UTOT model by Venkatesh? And if that is not the case, is there a feasible future study that could be done on the integration of TRI 2.0 as well as UTOT 2.0?
Good question again. I'm glad you've looked at the literature already. They're not the same. They're not the same. In fact, the whole area of technology readiness was kind of organically grown. It's something, and as I said, the technology adoption model kind of looks at a post hoc type of situation. You have the product adoption model, in general, about the adoption curve, so to speak. For example, the traditional adoption models would define explorers at the first 16% or 20% of the market that adopts the product. Then we come with the early adopters, late adopters, and then the laggards. There are terminology there, right, for different adoption phases as a technology or any kind of new product goes through a adoption cycle. Technology readiness is something which can be measured ahead of time about, who's your target market and what is the technology readiness. It is not based on any particular new technology, but it's basically what is the customer's internal hardwired makeup in terms of their reactions to cutting edge technology. So you measure that and then try to segment that market into those different categories so that the TRI can be used to measure that. And the TRI can be a contributor to the willingness to adopt a given technology. And in fact, there are several papers in the literature that I've already tried to use technology readiness as one of the drivers of technology adoption. It's not the same as technology adoption, but it's kind of like the underlying driver. So I would say the TR can be used in tandem with some of those traditional adoption models, including TAM, the technology adoption model. But they can complement each other. In fact, there are 3 or 4 papers that have already been published that link the two.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. This is Dr. Nitesh, working as an associate professor in the university. First of all, thank you so much for such insights, because it had developed, as you said, you must have put up some seeds. So actually it is working now. So my question is, first thing, as you said in the beginning, that you collected data from insights from middle level managers, high level managers. So you must have gone through some challenges. So my question is, what were those challenges and how you overcome it? And my second question is, how can serve call be applied in industries like healthcare and education?
Yes, sir. Data collection always has challenges, and again, especially for us academics, that's a big issue. Students may not still appreciate that very much, but yeah, there are challenges. But one of the challenges is to get an entree into being able to talk to senior managers and so forth. And this is where the Marketing Science Institute actually came in very handy. I mentioned the Marketing Science Institute as one of the supporters of the stream of research projects that I did earlier in my career. And they actually opened up doors to these companies, high-level companies. And so we were able to get access to managers. So that way, the MSI was like a catalyst for this. So that helped. And then your second question was
Related to how we can imply this serve call model in education and healthcare.
yes, healthcare. The circle model has been already employed in a lot of different sectors. It is general enough. The key concepts like the 5 dimensions of service quality. We also have developed an ES-Qual scale, which I didn't even touch upon because we had very limited time. If a 2-day seminar, I can talk about all that. But again, it has its own dimensions, but they all map on very nicely to the 5 original dimensions. So those are general dimensions that are applicable. Healthcare, obviously it's a very, very human-based service, but it is also becoming a very, very high-tech service. So it's a very, I think, fertile ground for new research that takes some of these traditional concepts and applies it there. And people are already applying those. In fact, one of my colleagues, Professor Len Berry, specifically talking about healthcare, the last 20 years of his life, of his career now, he has devoted exclusively to healthcare. So please Google him. And he's actually working with medical doctors right now and publishing in medical journals. I'm really inspired, and he's one of my mentors, Dr. Leonard Berry. So he has written a lot on healthcare service quality and bringing some of these principles into medicine. He's working with doctors and publishing with doctors. So there's a lot of opportunity, regardless of the type of sector that you look at. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much once again.
Very good morning, sir. I am Soumya from BIMM, specializing in marketing. My question is, do you believe customer expectations are becoming moving targets in the age of hyper-personalization? And how should makers respond to this dynamic shift in service quality perception?
Yeah, customer expectations are definitely moving targets. That's one other thing. They are not constant. They can vary depending on a number of attributes, some customer attributes, some market attributes, some transaction attributes. From transaction to transaction, expectations change. And some of our earlier writings, talk about these dynamism of expectations. And this is where I think the human element is going to continue to be important. Especially in this age of chatbots and so forth. There's a question about chatbots. If it's a human interacting with the customer, they can in a lot of ways sense what the customer is going through. They can actually feel like another human, right? Whereas when you're interacting with a chatbot, of course, AI is becoming, and they say now, from the tone of voice, chatbot can figure out what the feelings are. But sometimes if they misread, then it becomes a problem, right? So I would say your question, in fact, is very good because it really emphasizes the importance of the human interaction Not to say that technology is not good or, it has its place, but I think the human element is also, in my prediction, would be that it's going to continue to be very important, particularly in companies that are going to be market leaders in terms of service excellence. I think I cannot do away with that.
Thank you so much, dear audience, for such amazing questions. And thank you so much, sir, for interacting so well with us. I definitely feel that words fall short after what we have just witnessed. A masterclass, not just in marketing, but in vision and purpose. And to express our heartfelt gratitude on behalf of the entire institution, I would now like to invite ART member Dr. Prachi Vani, Senior Assistant Professor, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Respected Dr. Parasuraman, distinguished directors, faculty members, and dear student managers. My name is Dr. Prachi Vani from the Academic Rigor team, and I have the honor of proposing the vote of thanks on behalf of the Sri Balaji University, Pune. First and foremost, I extend our deepest gratitude to you, Dr. Parasuraman, sir, for delivering such an insightful and enriching masterclass. Your thoughts on sources of competitive readiness, technology readiness index, high-tech versus high-touch customer service, concept of service productivity, and then a shift on dual conceptualization of service productivity, typology of service enhancement have helped us revise and also get introduced to the new concepts of services marketing. The way you connected research with real-world applications made today's session truly memorable. A big thank you to our Chancellor, Professor Paramanandan Balasubramaniam, for allowing us this opportunity to explore and engage in academic rigor through such masterclasses. Your vision and leadership have been instrumental in shaping our academic endeavors. We also thank our Dean, Dr. Dimple Saini, for her continuous support and encouragement. We appreciate the support of the academic rigor team of BIMM, with the digital and IT team of the university, who provided their support in organizing this masterclass smoothly. To our students, I hope this session has added value to your understanding of services marketing. Once again, thank you, sir, for your time, wisdom, and generosity in sharing your expertise with us. You have a great day ahead.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all your kind words. And again, I wish you all the very best and good luck and Godspeed.
Thank you so much, sir. And you have a great day ahead. Students, you can be seated here for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.